to call this meeting.
Sorry, that's a new Zoom feature. I have no control over that, but you're ready to get going.
Thank you. I'm calling this meeting to order of the Historic Preservation Committee. We do have a quorum present. This meeting is being held pursuant to and in compliance with ordinance number 20A16, an ordinance to ensure the continuity of government during the COVID-19 disaster. Opportunities for public access to this meeting are posted on the county's website at the county calendar. The public has real-time audio-visual access to this meeting over Zoom and real-time audio access to this meeting over telephone, both as provided in the lawfully posted meeting notice. Please note that this online meeting is a public record and is subject to disclosure under the Freedom of Information Act. The chat function has been turned off for this meeting. Everyone who is participating today, please remember it is good practice to mute your microphone until it is your turn to speak. Thank you. I want to welcome our two new members, Pete Sippert and Daniel Giddick. We're glad to have both of you with us, and we appreciate your interest. Is there anything either of you would like to say about that interest in historic preservation? Pete?
Thank you, Jared. I'm looking forward to meeting everybody. We have such a rich history. I'm a relatively new resident to Virginia, just 2 years. So interested in learning about the history of our area greater and how we can contribute. I have read the materials, but I have a lot to learn. Apologies if I ask about acronyms or terms. I'll try not to slow us down, but it's good to meet everybody.
No problem. Daniel?
Likewise, it's a privilege as well to meet and to be able to work with everyone. I'm a returning resident to Virginia after a number of years away in Charleston, South Carolina. I grew up outside of Chesterfield, Virginia, in an old home there, and apples don't fall far from trees. So I also purchased a old historic home in Scottsville to keep that tradition going, and looking forward with being making good contacts and working whether for the greater good of my new community. So thank you again for the privilege of being with you all.
Thank you. We're grateful to have both of you with us. We have a pretty tight agenda today because at 6 o'clock we will, in fact, have to be done. So first item on the list is the approval of minutes for the May meeting. Are there any changes or additions to that meeting, to those minutes? If not, may I have a motion for approval?
I approve.
Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Betsy. It's been moved and seconded that we approve those minutes of May. All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Thank you. The minutes are approved. We have a discussion item interpreting Scottsville's Black history and potential historic marker sites. Margaret gave us information to use to make some of those conversations easier. Matt Lawless and Annie Whitehouse are here, I guess. I see Annie is here. Welcome. I don't see Matt yet, but I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you to talk further with us about this.
Hi everyone, my name's Annie. So I'm working as a planning intern for the town this summer. Can everyone hear me? Matt should be joining us shortly. So Matt's the town administrator for Scottsville. And I just kind of have been working with him to pull they've had a lot of different conversations about some historic markers and potential sites in the town over the past couple of years. And so I kind of have been trying to consolidate everything into one place and kind of hopefully move it forward. I know these things do take time. But I know there was a document that we had compiled. I think it was shared with you all ahead of the meeting. I can also share, can I share my screen with the document?
Yes,
Okay, I'll go ahead
yes.
and do that. And I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know we really appreciate you guys putting us on the agenda. Is everyone able to see the document?
Yeah.
So we just have 3 sites that have come up in conversation over the past couple of years. And obviously these are not well vetted resources. It's not all documented primarily yet, but just kind of a starting point to compile all of the information we have. So the first one is the location of our Rosenwald School, which is actually was located where Union Baptist Church is still located today. That's off of Hardware Street in the town. And so that was the thought process behind that, is that it would be a marker to describe Black education first within the Baptist Church and then the operation of the school and the years it was operational. And then a lot of our information we have from that currently comes from the Preservation Virginia Architectural Study on Rosenwald Schools in Virginia. And they've done a pretty thorough mapping of these locations across the state. And then the Department of Conservation and Recreation obviously has resources and information on the importance of the schools and where they were located and kind of the history behind them. So that was our first location that we're interested in. And then in addition, because the school was located next to Union Baptist Church, which is still active, it's kind of an opportunity to acknowledge that it's the oldest Black congregation in the Scottsville area. The second site is a little more something that I think there's been a lot of digging in terms of resources, but it's not finalized. But we have a location near the farmer's market. It's actually a parking lot currently, but we have, through deed records and land records and tax records, uncovered that there was a woman named Minerva Lewis who owned the property, which just in terms of population and what was going on at the time is impressive. In terms of the resources that have been found for that, we have info from the 1901 deed book that shows that she owned the lot within the town. We have insurance maps at our office that show it was being used as a saloon and apartments. And we think that kind of the interesting piece of this is that she owned this property and was operating it, but then it was eventually deeded away in 1910, which could tie into a conversation about the Great Migration. And then we're kind of trying to work on figuring out the actual birth and death certificates for her. So this is obviously not a primary source, it's a copy of an email, but we do have people that have more information on her. And I'm kind of just trying to put it all in one place so it's accessible. So we just think it's kind of a opportunity to tell an interesting story about a Black woman landowner in the town limits. And then the third site that we wanted to kind of bring to people's attention is Victory Hall, which is where I am right now. It's where the town offices are located. And the thoughts were that a marker could mark the segregated entrance to the theater, and then would have a special statement of justice and welcome to acknowledge that. And we actually have a lot of, the Scottsville Museum here has a lot of information on the theater and what shows have been there and the importance of it to the town. But I think kind of tying that into, the greater history of segregation in Virginia would be really interesting and important. So that's what I have prepared for you guys. I know that I'm still learning the process of these things, but I'm grateful that you kind of gave us time to bring it to everyone's attention, and hopefully that at least starts the process of getting the resources in order.
Thank you, Annie. Do you have plans? You have plans for historic markers. You haven't yet finalized the text for those markers yet.
So that is definitely something I can work on the rest of my time here. I wasn't super clear if that would be helpful, or if the marker process is like, if the text writing kind of needs to go through a different person to be written, or if that is a helpful thing for you guys to say, like, here, we've written the text, you guys can edit it, we can work on pulling resources. So if that would be helpful, I'd be happy to look into that and do some work on that.
Absolutely. Liz, do you have anything to add to that? Liz is the chair of our markers subcommittee, and she may have something that she could add as well.
Thanks, Jared. I'm actually not the chair. We don't have a chair of the subcommittee, but I can try to let you in on where we are in the process. As you may know, we've been working on completing 5 markers in the county to meet a Board of Supervisor goal, declared goal to install 5 additional or 5 historic markers in Albemarle, reflecting more diverse histories and particularly stories of women and people of color. And so we're hard at work on that. And if you stay on the meeting, you'll hear a little bit more about where we are working on those markers. At the same time, we are thinking towards a longer term, more permanent marker program and providing structure to your point about, you know, how does a topic get proposed? Who crafts the text? What role does the Historic Preservation Committee play? Are there roles for example, how could our partners at the Albemarle Charlottesville Historical Society assist in perhaps research or vetting of text? How do we solicit engagement from community members? Those are things we're working on. And so I think you coming to present, you know, Scottsville in general, coming to the table at this point is really great, because we can keep you in mind and keep you in the loop as we work to develop those guidelines. So I think our timeline for that will come a little more towards the end of the year, after we can kind of clear the hurdle of completing the markers that we're currently working on. As you may know, we're kind of limited in our ability to work as a subcommittee due to FOIA and COVID and all that, but it is something we can think about.
Great, thank you. I know in terms of Albemarle and Scottsville, sometimes we have to kind of advocate a little more and say, we're also down here. So that's great if we can just, be kept in mind. Thank you.
Yeah. Margaret, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I would just emphasize that the importance of if you've got the time to work on the text, that would be great. As Liz mentioned, it can be hard for the subcommittee to move quickly through any particular marker. So whatever help comes in from the outside would be really is important.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of the research that you've already done would lead you to a good deal of the information that would be needed for a marker, and anything that you can do to bring some of that together would be really helpful. It looks like a number of things that you've presented to us would work for inclusion in a marker text.
Great, that's great to hear. Thank you, guys.
Is there anyone else on the committee who wishes to ask Annie about or contribute to this general discussion? We're really glad that you're doing this work, and it's wonderful that you're paralleling what we're doing elsewhere in the county.
Chair, I might have just a quick educational question, if that's okay.
Sure.
Sanborn maps, I wasn't familiar with them, but evidently their insurance provider, they had most detailed maps. And the comment here about redlining, does that mean that Sanborn maps sometimes had demographic information attached to them as part of the maps? And maybe that's a question for the committee, or I'm also happy if that's a question for offline.
I'm not personally, I'm not certain. I've looked at a lot of Sanborn maps. I haven't seen the information on them broken down in precisely that way. But I know that work has been done. I know the City County Historical Society has published articles that include information of that type, some of which comes from the Sanborn maps. But does anybody else know any more about this?
I only asked because it was noted that they were used to redline, which I assume in this context means that it was used to deny insurance to underserved communities.
Right.
Thank you.
Ed, do you have any other information about the Sanborn maps in that respect?
Not in the respect of redlining, no, but it has a tremendous amount of information on it. You know, it's all coded. Oh, the Sanborn maps are all coded, and they have tremendous amount of how many stories high, how many windows, all sorts of wonderful things. But I don't know your answer about your redlining.
Right, right. Sounds like nobody, nobody really knows. All right, other questions or comments? Very good. Well, Annie, do you have anything further for us? We'll be glad to hear it if you do.
No, thank you for your time. And I'll follow up and see what we can get done for you guys.
Very good. We'd like to keep hearing from you as you move along, and to any extent that we can help, we'll be happy to do so.
Thank you, Annie. That information was immensely helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Moving along then, we have work group updates. Liz, you have historic markers, text status, and topics in general that you want to talk about?
Yeah, thanks. I'm sorry I had to miss last month's meeting, but I understand that there was a lot of work going on with the Union Run marker. I guess I want to just go through the 4 topics that are still sort of at a decision point. And maybe this is a good recap or introduction for some of those that are new on the committee. Of the 5, markers that we're working on, we know that the Albemarle Training School marker has been installed. The Virginia Lee Murray marker, the decision point on that has to do with the marker location out in the Cobham area. And I think we've discussed this informally or formally as a committee, subcommittee, but I wanted to bring the recommendation for the marker location to the larger preservation committee. And just to summarize, the thought process, the Virginia Lee Murray marker is written, the subject matter is the Virginia Lee Murray Virginia Lee Murray was an African-American educator. She became the first Black supervisor for Albemarle County. And so importantly to the siting, she began her teaching career in Cobham, which is in the sort of Sismont area of northwest Albemarle. And east, I'm sorry, east,
Right.
northeast. So the problem with the crossroad community of Cobham is that it's not well suited for a marker. And so the challenge became, is multifold. Finding an area that speaks to the place specific, nature of this marker, that we are in the Cobham vicinity where she taught, and that there were several schoolhouses in this area. And as a demonstration teacher, she would have rotated. Am I frozen or are you all? Okay, I think I'm back. I don't know if you lost me there, but everyone was frozen on my screen. So Cobham is not well suited because it's a tiny little crossroad with not good pull off. And so I started looking a little further out, came up with a few ideas. One was a crossroads at kind of closer to Sismont, getting a little further away from Cobham. But ultimately where I'm going with this is the recommendation from the subcommittee is to install the Virginia Lee Murray marker in the vicinity at the location of the St. John Rosenwald School, which is on St. John Road. I have the distance. It's not too far. Let's see, it is
It's a little farther north.
1.3 miles from Cobham. And the great thing about that location is that there is an existing Rosenwald school there. And we know that Virginia Murray did teach there in the early years. It may have even been that she got her teaching start there. We just don't exactly know. But she taught there before becoming supervisor in Albemarle County. She was there from 1928 to 1929. I got a lot of this information from conversation with Lorenza Dickerson and also with Rebecca Kenny, who is the, I think, president of the, or maybe the vice president of the St. John Family Life and Fitness Center there at the Rosenwald School. She is our connection, or would be our connection to the church there, and we would work with the pastor. I think tentatively they're, or at least, I think they're amenable to the sign, and we would just need to follow up with the formalities. It would also be in the kind of location of an existing DHR state highway marker that's talking about the Rosenwald School. So I think those bookend nicely, and paint a broader, a larger story through these limited signs. We can tell more of a story.
Mhm.
Diane, Betsy, let me know if I've summarized that right. I just, want to definitely make sure that we're all on board before moving any further in terms of formal conversation with the St. John Church.
Okay, thank you,
I think
Des.
that's about,
Anyone-
they were excited about it when we initially spoke with them about her gene supervising. She's taught in a gene supervisor teaching capacity. So I think that we won't have a problem with their approving it wherever. I'm just up the road from there. When I actually see, I thought you did a great job in photographing the proposed sites, but it just looks so different when you're actually there. I would like to see, a curve looks different when you're there versus in a photograph to me.
Yeah, I did. I went
Yeah.
around and took windshield pictures of all the proposed locations and kind of laid out, this would be good, but this wouldn't be so good. And we really want to make it easy for people to actually get to the sign and read it.
Sure. Other questions or comments for Liz?
Do we need to have so I have a few other kind of procedural questions. Is that sufficient to move forward with that location? Are we, do we need to vote on it?
I think we should vote. And of course, ultimately, it'll still be up to DHR, VDOT, to decide whether this works, but I'm sure it will, since there's a marker there already. I can't imagine there'd be a problem. And it is a good location, both from the perspective of the content of the sign and the location of it according to VDOT regulations. There does have to be, as I think everyone knows, a place where you can pull over and actually read the sign. And that limits to some degree where these signs can actually go. I think a good location has been chosen, and I would suggest that if the full committee is ready to make a decision about the location of this sign, we could go ahead and vote on that.
Are
If
we
I don't
voting
hear
on
any-
location or vicinity? Just the general area?
Location, specific location.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if I was to put forward a more motion, and I don't know if I can, it would be to, approve the citing of the Virginia Lee Murray marker in the general location of the St. John Rosenwald School, and to work with the owner there to cite appropriately, and also keeping in mind VDOT. I'm not sure that we would be bound to VDOT because we're not doing a DHR sign, we're doing a local marker sign, but that would be a question to run the ground. This is a long motion.
Right. And I think it makes a certain amount of sense to try to parallel what VDOT requires, since there's a sign there already. But yes, you're right. Is there any?
Just to
Yes,
clarify, we would need VDOT approval if the location is in the right of way. We need the property owner approval
Yes,
on their site.
correct. Thank you. Is there further discussion about this, or is there a second to Liz's lengthy motion?
Second.
Second.
All right. Betsy has seconded the motion. Is there additional discussion? If not, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Thank you. The motion is unanimously approved, and we really appreciate the work that has been done on this. And I think that as the subcommittee in particular continues to move forward, this will be a big accomplishment.
Thank you. Jared, is it okay if I run through the other markers and just quickly make sure we're up to speed on those?
Yes, you may.
So I don't know. I know that Nancy sent her regrets that she could not attend today, and she's been working closely with the Ivy Creek Foundation regarding the proposed sign for the Riverview Farm. We do have final proposed text from researchers, as well as the board of the Ivy Creek Foundation did vote on text. They are still working out the placement. I don't know if it would be beneficial for us to, perhaps it would be beneficial to, as a committee, review that text and move that along through its process. I have it up on a Word document if we want to look at that. I don't know if there's any
Yes,
waiting.
I think that would be useful.
Okay. I wish I could speak more to the specific process, but I can tell you that that Nancy worked very closely with the Ivy Creek Foundation researchers, Edwina St. Rose, and I think Liz Sargent were involved in developing the text. And this, I can just read it. Riverview Farm became one of the largest African-American farmsteads in the region after emancipation. Formerly enslaved Hugh Carr and wife Texie Mae Hawkins Carr established and grew the successful farm between 1870 to 1899. Eldest daughter Mary and a husband Conley Greer expanded the over 200-acre farm, while she served most notably as principal of Albemarle Training School, and he as the first African-American Albemarle County agricultural extension agent. For nearly a century, Riverview Farm served as a model farm and hub for local church, education, and civic activities. It is listed on the Virginia Landmarks Register and the National Register of Historic Places.
Thank you. And that text was approved by them, is that correct?
That is correct. They actually approved it and then added one clarifying word, and I think that was Albemarle or county, I can't remember, in that African-American Albemarle County agricultural extension agent that came slightly later,
Okay.
but was through
Okay.
foundation, yes. Small word.
As a,
27, 21.
okay, as a full committee, would we like to go ahead and approve that text? Since it's in front of us, I see no reason not to. I'd accept a motion to do so.
I motion to approve the Riverview Farm text.
And I second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve that text for the Riverview Farm marker. If there's no further discussion, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of approval of that text, please raise your hand. Opposed? Thank you. That text is approved. Thank you, Liz, and thank you, Diane, and others who have worked on this. This is a big help.
Yeah, the question sort of, I think in the what they're resolving now is siting, and that's a somewhat, I mean, maybe unexpected component of developing when we will develop and if we develop a more permanent local marker program. It's very important to think about the siting as part of the text development, and I think the Virginia Lee Murray marker is an example of making a marker and then going, oh gosh, got to find a good location that is accessible, kind of soup to nuts process, and so it's challenging sometimes. I also just want to provide a update so everyone can appreciate that we are also still working on the text review for the Glendower School, which is located in Glendower, which is in the vicinity of Porters and Esmont on 20 South. Diane has been working with the historian Hannah Scruggs, who I think is a valued historian in the local community there, in the sort of Yancey Community School community center group, and so we're shopping text, using her as a conduit to, I think, solicit or garner community trust there. Diane, please jump in if I'm.
Oh no, that's fine. She actually she said it's fine. She reviewed it and she thought what we had. It sounded like it was accurate and well worded. So she's approved it.
Great. So
Good.
we'll probably be ready to share that with the committee, perhaps by the next meeting, along and hopefully maybe a proposed location for the Glendower School. And then finally, we have the Union Run marker, and I know Betsy's been hard at work on that. And I just want to make sure, it sounds like we would be on track for a DHR submittal in September.
And here is the submittal. It was delivered to Margaret on Tuesday. And Margaret, I trust it's on its way to Richmond.
The application was emailed a while back, and the paper copy was mailed on Friday.
Thank you.
And
Good. Now we can say that Betsy is the appointed applications person.
Yeah.
A lot of
Margaret,
work.
did you have something to add?
Yeah, can we just go back to the Riverview Farm for a second? I assume it's safe to assume that the location is somewhere at the Riverview Farm property. It's a matter of exactly where. So maybe
Yes.
somebody could make a motion just to say, the location isn't an issue as long as it's somewhere on that property and we can get that issue out of the way. Don't want to have to come back another time to deal with the location.
Okay.
Ann?
Yeah, that was what my query was about, because the entrance to the Ivy Creek Natural Area is a terribly dangerous location where I have failed for 13 years to try to get the middle lane put in there. So I hope there are no requirements that the sign be placed within sight of hydraulic road.
And that's part of, and that's part of why the board decided to go with the local marker as opposed to a DHR marker. We did discuss the kind of pros and cons, and ultimately the Ivy Creek Foundation wanted the local marker so that it could live on property. And I think that makes sense too, because it's a joint county city owned property. So, you know,
Right.
have a little more
Does
leeway
that,
off the street.
does that mean it would be somewhere up near the farmhouse as opposed to down on the road?
I think that
Has to be.
for Nancy, because she's been working with them, but what I've heard locations near the parking lot, sort of as you approach, essentially in the as you would arrive at the
Right.
site.
So it's not actually out on the road itself.
We are not proposing placing it on,
Good.
what is that?
Good.
Early
Very
Still
good.
Road, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Excellent.
That solves my problem. Thank you very much.
So should we vote on the recommendation to install in the within the site of Ivy Creek Natural Farm?
How about a safe and reasonable location within the Riverview Farm property?
Yeah, I
So
think
moved.
that will work. Thank you.
I can't
Second.
actually make the motion, somebody. So.
She just said so moved, and I'll second it if I'm allowed, otherwise somebody else has
No,
to.
you're not allowed. I'm sorry.
Well, I'll make the
I
motion.
think,
Okay.
all right. The motion's made. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Peter said had
Peter
his name on.
seconded it.
Okay.
Peter has seconded it already. Is there additional discussion or are we ready to take a vote? And basically, what this says is that it will be installed somewhere on that property after entering off the road itself.
Yes.
All right?
I guess I do. After the vote, I have another question.
Okay. All in favor of that location, raise your hand. Opposed? Thank you. That's been approved. Ann?
Yes, so in following up with this, who does make the final decision? Because we several years ago had a sort of big discussion with Margaret and county staff about the fact that the county staff was supposed to be sort of taking the lead on the building renovation and things like that. And I understand that isn't necessarily the case anymore. So I want to make sure that this sign location thing is the boxes are checked by the right people. Who, you know, I think up there where the road splits to make the circle around the parking lot, something like that would be, so people see the sign and then they go park and then they walk back to it, would be ideal. As long as it's inside the gate, would be ideal. But I would like some specificity on who's actually going to decide.
Well,
All
all I
right,
can
Bill.
tell you is that Nancy's been working with, Sue Eckhart, who is then, in coordination with the board there. And I know there was one at one point, maybe putting it near the information kiosk. I mean, they're certainly thinking, I think, about the same things you're thinking about as well.
I think if it's at the kiosk, that's too far away and people who are looking specifically for the marker will drive around and not see it and leave. So that's why it needs to be out in front. So anyway, Margaret, I will dump that on your lap to try to ferret out what's really going on. They've had staff turnover there again. So I don't even know who the people are who are.
Okay, I'm just looking through my emails from Siri. I asked her what steps we needed to take given the different routes these things could go. And she says, if one of these markers is being put on county property, then it needs board approval. Doesn't actually say the actual location needs board approval. It's just a general board approval. So I guess I'm trying to, I'm sort of blanking on earlier history on this marker, but let me look into that a little bit and we'll figure out the exact steps. Maybe we just need to get it onto a board agenda as a consent agenda or something. And
We can have our crack at it then. Thank you. That's
Right,
perfect.
right. Because we're only making the recommendations, as the Historic Preservation Committee, we're making a recommendation to the board. So that would seem appropriate.
Correct. That's correct. All right, Liz, do you have anything further?
No, thank you so much for
Thank you.
speak.
Thank you so much for all your work and the work of others on the subcommittee. And we'll look forward to more later on. Let's move to demolition and documentation. Everyone should have received the demo report. Is there any question about that report? We don't need to vote, but
I have no question.
all right. Did you say you did have a question or you didn't?
Not have, so,
Your sound is off, Ed.
is it on?
Now it's on. What did you say?
Okay, all I'm saying is that I did look it over, okay, and I have seen no reason to do anything with any of those buildings. Maybe Ross or Carter have something further to say.
All right. Other comments or questions? Very
Sorry,
good.
maybe just a newbie question. In looking at it, would someone share with me the types of things that you're on the lookout for when you review these lists? And what type of discussion that may spawn in this forum?
Sure. The question is whether or not there's a property on that list whose demolition might cause difficulties with because of the potential historic character of the property that's being demolished, and that does come up occasionally. If in such a case, the member or two of the documentation and demolition subcommittee will go out and usually this is Ed and Ross, will go out and do documentation for the structure before it is raised.
So we generally review the demo to see if it's worthy of documentation. And then
Right.
one of our members goes out, two of our members go out there together. We measure and document the property, and Margaret saves it and puts it in her little historical vault.
Thank you for that context.
Certainly. Other comments on the demo report? I didn't see anything personally that looked scary. Carter?
Ross, what the house in Crozet is gone? The Tabor Street house?
Yes, yeah, it's gone. The only thing left is the really neat field stone that was used for the foundation is in a pile.
Okay.
But the site is cleared, unfortunately. I tried to get the Childs, who he's one of the committee members of the church that owns the land across the street. And the son Huff thought about it, but they took out the windows much too soon. Somebody wanted the windows and a lot of water got in. So it's gone.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Anyone else?
Uh,
Yes, Ed.
Do you want me to tell you about County Creek Farm now, or does that come later? I investigated that.
Yes, we have a couple of minutes you could devote to that. Yes.
Well, it's a part of the demolition thing. Yeah, it's actually the former dean of the School of Architecture, Karen Van Lingen, who's a dear friend, asked me and from a person she knew, and this person, private citizen, and I went out personally to do that. We got through the Historic Preservation Committee and looked at Powder Creek Farm. It's in terrible condition. The house itself, from pictures I took many years ago, looks like it could be a very old Georgian house, but actually it isn't. It's probably built sometime after the Civil War up through the early 20th century. But it is in terrible condition. It's abandoned. And I think that I would assume that the county should do something about that, whatever they do. I don't know what they do. Do they notify the owner and tell them they need to do something? But in any case, I think we should, I could only take pictures inside. And I have the old photographs I took many, many years ago, 20 years ago or so, of the outside. But the whole place is so overgrown, you can't take any pictures outside. But I took many inside, but it should be measured for posterity, I think. That's all I have on that.
Well, would either you or Ross or both like to do the measuring?
Do we need permission?
I mean, there's no demo permit. I think, you know, our
Do we have to wait for the demo permit, don't we? Isn't that what we have to wait for?
yeah, I mean, we'd be demoing every property in Albemarle County otherwise. We can't go and demo every structure that's in jeopardy, I don't think.
Right.
If someone has a contact with the property owner, you can, you know, I mean, you can request it, but
We could be doing that every day.
yeah.
What was the name
Sure.
of the farm, please, for the minutes?
Pounding Creek.
Pounding.
I guess, sorry, I have somebody on the phone here. I can't know how to turn it off. My point is, the house is in terrible condition. It's abandoned and the county should know about it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. The county, whoever the person is who sends out demolition or whatever those permits are. In that case, after that, then we could go measure it. Okay, but I don't think we do that before that happens. Okay?
Well, we don't go out and measure it unless we have owners, you know, the owner says we can. Do you remember off the top of your head what the address is?
It's on Dick Woods Road, and I forget. I sent it all to you. I also
Was it
sent
in the
Virginia
email?
landmarks. I sent it all to them.
Okay.
They sent me back tons of things on the house also.
Yep. Okay.
Margaret, that's a broader question that Ed's alluding to. I mean, the county has no, as far as I know, there is no mechanism for requiring a property to be maintained in a certain way or torn down. I mean, in the city, if you know, the city will say you got to fix this or tear it up, tear it down.
If it poses if it's a health problem or a danger to you know people, then there are things that can be done. So.
But it doesn't seem, I mean, there are, in the rural areas, there are, like Ross is saying, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of caving in structures that, I mean,
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure what the line is, what allows the building official to require something, but I can look into that and get the answer and let y'all know.
Ann?
I think one demarcation is when it's brought to somebody's attention, if it is open to the weather and to kids or somebody getting in there and getting hurt, or if it's not sealed up, then that's a reason for the county staff to be notified and go check it out. Because one of the houses on Clark Road partially burned and it was left open to the elements, and the neighbors all said, look, somebody's going to get killed in there because they're going in there and playing around. And within a week, the insurance company had taken care of it. It had been in sort of out-of-town company ownership for a long time, and we were having a hell of a time trying to get them to do something. But somebody was, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I interrupted you. I'm sorry. this property is in the middle of a huge cornfield that's leased for agricultural purposes. So anybody up there is clearly trespassing and shouldn't be there. It's well off of the road. So I don't think it's our jurisdiction to tell anybody what to do with their house. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. If somebody's there, they're up to no good and deserve what they get, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, we don't have the kind of things in place that the city has that we would need to have in order to do something like that. Very well. Questions? Are there new owners of historic properties we need to be aware of this month? Or threatened properties to watch?
I have a question, and that is, if anybody finds out the owners of the Longwood farm, I would sure love to know it before I go knock on the door. They seem to be improving their fence lines, and they haven't torn down anything yet, but it makes me very nervous. So thank you.
I don't know. Ross, either you nor Carter has the answer to that. I don't know who they are.
I did not have it listed when it ended up selling. I haven't looked. I mean, is it in an LLC? And what does the GIS?
Yes, I think GIS just has an LLC, so I didn't know.
It's
I'm not
somebody
very
out of
good at-
town, and my understanding is they bought it and for whatever reason had a change of plans or set cold feet or something, and they're fixing it up and they're gonna sell it again for whatever reason. But there's some sort of, and Ross, you may be aware of this, there's some sort of restriction on, they have to wait a certain period of time before they can sell it. It sounded,
I mean, for
Wow.
capital gains purposes.
and maybe it's a tax reason, I don't know. I didn't know if there was some sort, I'm not sure. And I may
All
not
right.
have the correct information, but my understanding is that they're not going to move there and that they will be putting it back on the market at some point.
And I would call Peter Wiley, Justin
Okay,
Peter's
okay.
brother handled that sale for the
got it.
purchasers.
Thank you.
And they started on the guest house, which is not historic at all. That was designed by, but anyway, I don't know what they've done to the main house. I've not been by there. But the old school is the property that is back behind that was turned into a house. You remember there was an old school on that property we talked about in the past.
Okay. Yep, that's the old Mickey farm. All righty,
Yeah.
thank you very much. I will chase those down. Appreciate it.
All right. Other questions for the group? All right. Our next session of the Historic Preservation Committee, our next meeting will be a virtual one. It will be on July 26th, 4:30 p.m. It will be a Zoom meeting. I'm now going to adjourn the full committee meeting.
Just one quick
and
question.
call-
One quick question. Margaret,
Yes,
are we still building content for the website in terms of historic markers and information that will go on there?
We still plan to update the website, yes.
Mhm. Okay, I was just curious about, building content for the proposed historic marker program. So,
I think that was one of the recommendations that was made.
okay. Thank you.
thank you. We'll adjourn the full meeting, and I'm calling to order the meeting of the Historic Marker Subcommittee. Is there further discussion about your ongoing work?
I don't have anything to bring to the subcommittee, but I welcome any thoughts from Diane or Betsy.
And I don't have anything to contribute.
This is so the subcommittee can meet within FOIA requirements.
Well, just
So this
the
is,
thought about
this is not
drafting,
official.
yeah, drafting
This is not-
a letter for property owners if we're thinking about placing a marker somewhere within, private property somewhere, just maybe thinking about drafting a form letter for property owners sometime, at some point in the future. I'm not saying that has to be done now, but just thinking about that.
A form letter may be difficult only because the work on each marker is a very specific kind of thing in each case, and it may be difficult to do that as a form letter, but
You
it's
can get
possible.
creative with be pretty creative with a template. That's all I'm saying. It doesn't have to be a generic letter, but somewhat of a template. Just something to think about.
Well, I think you and the other subcommittee members should consider this and bring it back to the full committee.
I don't have
Anything
anything
further?
else. No, thank you.
And Liz doesn't have anything further. All right, and Nancy's not here.
No, I mean, I think we appreciate the time, but we didn't come to this meeting with the objective of having a subcommittee meeting. So appreciate the opportunity anyway.
Sure.
So
Well, this is the way the subcommittee will continue to meet in order to satisfy FOIA requirements. And the plan, which I think we acknowledged a month or so back, was to allow the subcommittee to meet toward the end of the full committee meeting, and that's why we're doing it this way, which hopefully will make it a little bit easier than it has been, because it's the only way really that we can handle subcommittee business given the FOIA restrictions we are operating under.
Understood.
So shall we set up the agenda for next month like we've done today?
Yeah.
You're talking about the subcommittee, correct? Yes.
That would be fine. And I think we can come prepared to maybe discuss more substance regarding the framework of the local marker program. It's been, as you know, moving mountains just to get the individual markers pushed along.
Right. I guess I would just point out that members who are not part of the subcommittee would not be required to attend the subcommittee portion of the meeting if they're not interested in.
That's correct. And it's important that members of the subcommittee keep in mind the FOIA requirements, including those as applied to emails. All right. Very well. If there's nothing further, I will adjourn this committee and the subcommittee itself. I look forward to seeing all of you next month. Again, thank you for your attention and welcome to our two new members.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.